Last Friday, I examined the question of whether or not Violet Bridgerton could be considered a pick-me through the lens of the woman who originated that term in fairly modern day pop culture. Yes, people, I'm referring to Meredith Grey and the iconic pick me, choose me, love me line. However, whilst filming the video, I had made mention of the fact that as much as we all admired Patrick Dempsey's full head of hair back when he was the McDreamy, looking back at his actions through the seasons has confirmed for me that Derek Sheperd is anything but dreamy. Yes, I do belong to the school of thought that believes that McDreamy is McNasty. And in this video, I'll be examining why I most certainly think that it wouldn't be out of line to consider Derek Sheperd as one of the villains of the show. Now, Grey's Anatomy is not devoid of its villains. There's the gun-toting Gary Clark from season 6 who made my heart drop every time we begin the episode because, gods, so many deaths. Then there's the bus that offed George and the plane crash I would never forgive because yes, in Grey's, it's not only human beings that can be villains, inanimate objects and events can very well wreck us too. Some could consider Izzy a villain, I do not. Others might not consider Owen a villain, he most certainly is. But the one that flew below our radar for so long has to be Derek Sheperd. Derek is as core to the story of Grey's as Meredith is by virtue of his relationship with her and how up until his, spoiler alert, for those who have no idea, up until his passing, it was core to how she grew up as a person and a surgeon. And even his passing was still a pretty devastating event for her that further helped her character grow. So Derek is important to Meredith. He is important to the story of Grey's. And to me, he is also someone whose actions and words could be read as pretty villainous as well. Our first introduction to him was the start of a pretty inappropriate relationship with someone who is a subordinate. Now, I read an article, can't remember which one exactly, it was a while back, years ago. But the article stated that Meredith should have done better in resisting Derek because Shaw is her boss and in a much senior position to her, but he wasn't the type of person who would have punished her for rejecting his advances, and so she should also take some blame in how things panned out between them. And I remember reading it and immediately disagreeing with the point raised. Like, sure, we know that Derek isn't the type of person who would act up against Meredith for turning him down. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he was pressuring her. From the very first episode, when Meredith points out that he is her superior and what he's doing is inappropriate, he responds in his Derek way, with that smirk and smile and oozing charm that subtly indicates that he fully intends to wear down Meredith's defenses and objections until she says yes. And he does that. Now, you cannot say that Derek is not aware of just how emotionally vulnerable Meredith is. The fact that he tosses her having sex with George whilst drunk after she and Derek had broken up confirms that Derek is aware of the type of person Meredith Grey is. That she's emotionally vulnerable, that she tends to hook up with men when she's in said state. After all, that is how their relationship started. Plus, I will never forgive any of them for not calling out George's rapist nice guy act when it all went down. Every time I rewatch the seasons, especially when we get to season 2, I am always so pissed and keep screaming, that will never be written that way in today's world because everybody will be calling bullshit. But part of the reason why Derek is a villain to me is, like I said, the way in which he kept pushing and prodding and doing everything he can to have Meredith in his life and his bed again. Totally disregarding how everything will go down should the other interns find out the truth, which they do, and which, as we would all expect, blows up not in his face, which once again speaks to the power imbalance in their relationship. The other interns can't criticize him, and neither can the other residents, really. Bailey is an exception, remember? But the others can't criticize him. And so the person who suffers the brunt of the entire debacle, the one who is mocked and who is looked at as sleeping her way to the top and to surgeries, is Meredith Grey. Which is a disservice to her because we know she's brilliant. We know she had to put in monumental effort considering Ellis's pedigree, and yet she's reduced to slutty intern status thanks to Derek. And this was before Addison showed up and Meredith was elevated to other woman status, which then led to episodes upon episodes and 2 seasons of Derek going every which way between Addison and Meredith because his ass could not bloody choose. And no, you cannot tell me that, well, he chose his marriage and chose Addison, which is why he had the quasi breakup with Meredith, because come on now. He broke up with her and yet was the monitoring spirit, tracking her every move with vested interest in the men she was sleeping with, even to the point where he was making snarky comments about her and calling her a whore. Sure, she broke a guy's dick, but it was an accident. Sheesh. And don't get started on when it looked like she was finally settling down and could possibly start a committed relationship with Finn. His ass shows up again with his dreamy eyes, charming smile, and his I want you desperation that led to them having sex on the night of the hospital prom, an event that had Bailey pointing out Meredith's drawers that had been posted on the bulletin board the day after. Like Addison said, he couldn't let go of Meredith because he wanted the ingenuity that was Meredith Grey. The look of adoration, someone who was young and malleable, because at his core, Derek Sheperd does have a god complex, coupled with main character syndrome. And with Meredith, he got to experience that in the early seasons, when she was learning and growing from being an intern to being a resident, which is markedly different from Addison at that point, who was a fellow attending, and so had the expertise, skill, knowledge, power, and credentials to stand firm in our own belief and worth. It's kind of implied that that also contributed to the dissolution of their marriage. And before you say, oh, that isn't the case, Addison was just saying whatever and you're just reaching, please note that a lot of the tension between Meredith and Derek after their own marriage arose after Meredith had become skilled enough that she too had turned into an expert in her field. And that's when a lot of the microaggressions started on Derek's side. His push for his work to matter more, for Meredith to abandon her own career in order to advance his in DC. Like, sure, he eventually caved and changed his mind, but those show quite clearly that Derek Sheperd believes that he is the shit, and that the world, and by extension Meredith, should revolve around him. Which she did, back when she was younger and had no experience, and he was her boss and her teacher. Now that she's older, things are a bit different, and this is why Christina found it necessary to remind Meredith that Derek is not the son, she is. And she needs to remember that. I will forever be miffed at him just upping and leaving Meredith when she messes up with the clinical trial. Like, yes, I admit, that's a big blow for him. Yes, I admit she shouldn't have done that, especially because it's important to his career. But it was Adele. Someone she had quasi-adopted as being part of her family through Richard and through Adele's own actions. Derek acting like it is absolutely unbelievable for me always makes me stunned, because like, bruh, you know your wife. She's the person who was feeling sympathetic towards a serial killer and showed up to his day of execution to keep him company. That is the woman you chose to marry, and your response to her doing something rightfully stupid was to walk away from her in the middle of an adoption process, leaving her alone even after you wrote it into your damn post-it vows that walking away is not an option, is not allowed. Something that Meredith had stuck to, even knowing everything that she's been through emotionally, and now checking out is what she instinctively does. But she stayed in that marriage, never walked away from it. And the man who wrote that as a core part of their vows is the one who broke it. I remember watching that scene and legit tossing my cup at my TV. I was so pissed. Talk about self-righteous, self-centered, hypocritical. Especially because we know that Derek has always sort of pushed for Meredith's career to be sacrificed for his own. It's bullshit. And the fact that he's always quick to bring up her fears and worries about being a terrible mother because of how much of a clusterfuck our upbringing was, courtesy of Ellis Gray, would never not make me scream. You do not tell the woman you claim to love, one you know is suicidal because of her mother's actions, one who you know has very active scars and fears about being a mother because of how she was raised. You do not tell her that she would be a terrible mother. That is villainous. And don't get me started on how he treats his baby sister. Like, yes, Amelia Sheperd tends to screw up and has done so in the past. But as at when she finds her footing on Grace, she's also an accomplished neurosurgeon. And yet, Derek Sheperd cannot see her as anything but the junkie that she was in the past. And that shit irked me every single time. Hell, when the news was revealed that she was a former drug addict, Derek and his big mouth and inconsiderate ass wasn't there for her. He didn't go to hold space for her at a very public outing. Instead, he runs his mouth off to fucking Owen Hunt, who is yet someone else in Grey's Anatomy that I loathe and despise. Ugh. Owen, I will forever be a hater. Gods. But back to Derek. He runs his mouth off to Owen and almost gets Amelia fired, which would have, without a doubt, been a double whammy for a recovering addict. And until that point, she was doing good. Like, sometimes I look at Derek Sheperd and I wonder if maybe somewhere in his subconscious he didn't like surrounding himself with people that he would consider fuck-ups, because they made him feel self-righteous and good about himself. Because he's a character that likes to bring up past indiscretions like a cudgel every time he gets into it with these characters. He does it with Meredith, he does it with Addison, he does it with Mark, he does it with Amelia. If you're someone who is remotely close to him, to the point of almost being family, best believe that Derek Sheperd has a list of all the times you've slipped up so he can wield them against you in an argument. Now, am I saying that Derek doesn't have any good traits? No. He is a brilliant neurosurgeon. It is clear in the world of Grey's that if anybody needs someone's hands on their brains, they are better off placing said brain in the brilliant hands of Derek Sheperd. And I will always approve of him being the only one who truly understood what Christina was going through post the shooting and how he gave her space to heal. I think if you're not someone who is married to, related to, or being childhood best friends with, he's a pretty decent person. However, the minute you fall into any of the categories I've spoken of, then his villainous tendencies make a showing. But hey, that's just me and my thoughts and opinions. Would love to hear yours. Do you think Derek Sheperd was a villain in the story that Grace tried to convince us was Prince Charming? Let me know in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share it if you want to. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.